I'll stand. Not because I'm not that good to look at. So, well, I want to thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here. This is going to be a great forum, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. And so I'm going to keep my opening remarks short because I want to hear what you have to say so that we can respond and we can have a good dialogue. And so thank you for having a great turnout because it was not easy for you to come when the weather outside is such a great day and the sun is shining and you could be doing all kinds of things besides being here. This shows to me that you're engaged. You think what we're going to talk about today is important, and so let's get to it. And I'm excited to hear what you have to say.
Good morning. Yeah, it's a great turnout. I'm David Johnson. I live in Ocheyedan. I represent 5 counties, including this one in northwest Iowa. Where is she? Where'd she go? Who's the new one? I just walked in the door with you. Are you here? Who's from Nebraska? Is she down here yet? Maybe not. There she is. Okay, Becky. Here's somebody who's moved here, right back there, and she's a Nebraska fan. I'm just gonna. So, hey, I know. The governor's spokesman accused me of being a grandstander, and so I'm going to. Can I sign this? All right. Here, I've got a pen.
No.
I am a grandstander. Let's talk about this today. Okay. All right. So let the questions begin, Jeff.
Thank you, everybody. Bill Maas. Bill was real close. There he is, right here. And Bill's going to bring up the subject of education. Give your name, address, even though I just gave your name, but only you know your address. So.
Well, I would be remiss if I didn't wish John Wills a happy birthday for those of you that didn't know it. Once a teacher, always a teacher. You can take the teacher out of the school, but you can't take the teacher out of the person and stuff. But my name is Bill Maas, and I'm a retired classroom teacher of 40 years experience where I taught mathematics, physics, and computer programming toward the end of my career. When I started teaching, Harold Hughes was the governor of Iowa. Being young and naive at the time, I foolishly thought that public education quality was the #1 priority of both the school districts and the Iowa legislature. As funding and classroom conditions gradually deteriorated over the next several years, I became a little more in tune to actual reality. Just as I was about ready to move to a more lucrative job, a new governor by the name of Robert D. Ray came along and started to make classroom teaching into a job that gave teachers self-esteem and even began to address teaching wages that were in the lower 50% of nationwide of teaching salaries. Being a visionary, he, along with the Iowa legislature, passed a public bargaining law for public employees. This even allowed educators a voice into what educational programs were needed in our public schools to make us the #1 state in both major standardized tests being used for college admissions. And it soon became a reality. This reality was an accepted fact and remained that way for years. This success was not something referred to as being part of fake news and was not the so-called alternative facts, which definition, by the way, makes me cringe, being a teacher who's always dealt with simple facts and not fiction. In future years, along came Governor Terry Branstad, who promised in 1983 in front of the press and 500 plus teachers at the annual assembly of the Iowa State Education Association to raise the average teaching salary of Iowans to the national average of $45,000. Within 2 years, he was going to do this. He also wanted to be, and self-proclaimed himself to be, the education governor. This year, I can only speak to the one school district. This year, the average teaching salary at Esterville Lincoln Central Schools is $44,000. Still $1,000 short of the goal promised in the mid-1980s, and still well below the national average salary of $56,000. In light of the bill that was signed into law yesterday, I doubt I shall live long enough for this to become a reality. My short answer questions, and by the way, if you don't want to answer them right now, that's fine. I will give you a copy of what I have And if you want to email me, I think all of you have my email address because I think I've written each and every one of you, and I'm in the phone book. John's probably got me on speed dial. But my questions basically very quickly are, how many schools in Iowa do you see closing their doors in the next 2 years because of the continuous underfunding effect of state aid? In an article this week, and this is the only one that I can't document because it was on the internet and I passed over it and didn't write down the source, I saw an estimate of up to 20 schools, many being in northwest Iowa, and who have no other viable districts to reorganize with. That was question number one. Question number two, really quickly, what is the current legislative plan to attract and maintain the best of the best teachers in Iowa? Everyone knows that you get what you pay for, as I have heard our governor say this many, many times. When are the needs of the students and the schools of Iowa going to be placed ahead of more tax breaks and gifts for businesses? It is estimated that $611 million will go to businesses this next fiscal year. These are in various forms. And it is, I can prove it on a fact, I've got a report and everything. The taxes on businesses in Iowa are either at the national average or below already. And those are my questions, and I'll have these, I'll leave them for you if you want them. But those are my questions. If you want to address some of them, that's fine, or if not, that's fine too.
Sure. Okay. All right, so with regard to how many schools will be closing because of the underfunding of state aid, so here's the thing. Supplemental state aid was set at $40 million this year. Most areas of the budget are getting a cut. We're able to not cut K-12 education with the de-appropriation bill, and then also provide schools with another $40 million. Is that as much money as we would have liked to provide for schools? No. I don't know if there will ever be enough money that we could donate to school, or we could appropriate to schools. But we have to stay within the confines of the state's budget. There's about $200 million of new money, and most of that is already taken for because of Medicaid increased costs, and then also because of built-ins that are already in the state's budget. So we also have to leave some room in there because I would expect that the Revenue Estimating Conference, when they meet in March, will say that our budget is off still. So we'll have to come in and de-appropriate again in March after that comes through. So we need some cushion there to be able to do that. So while I know $40 million wasn't the number that everybody hoped for, it wasn't the number I had hoped for, but you know what? It's what we can do right now. I was told by a school board member of the Sioux City School District, a very, very large school district in our state, that they will be defunct in the next 5 years if spending continues the way it does. That's Sioux City. Imagine, Ruth Van Ayrshire, Grettinger Trail, the really small school districts, how much spending is hurting them right now. So we need to look at what's happening here. And one of the things that we need to look at is what 80% of our school districts spend. 80% of their budgets is labor. And while I appreciate the work that teachers do, I know that you have a very thankless job, and it's a very difficult job. But at the same time, the contracts that are being made are over and above what we can afford. And so we need to be mindful of that. There's a lot of people who are not getting raises. There's a lot of people that are losing their jobs. There's a lot of people that are taking hits to their health insurance. And so we just need to deal with the economic realities that we're in right now. Is it fun? Not at all. Is it pleasant? No. Does it hurt? Yes. But that's what we have to deal with because our economy is slowing down, largely attributable to the farm economy, and hopefully we can get that turned around here shortly. What's the current legislative plan to attract the best teachers? That's a great question. We've supported the TLC program, the Teacher Leadership Compensation Program, to make teaching a profession in which you can strive to achieve different goals. There's different levels of teachers, and I support that program because I think, the presentations that I've seen, especially with the Spencer Community School District, they have really bought in to the TLC program and have excelled their teachers over and above the average classroom experience, so they can train their new teachers how to be better teachers. And I think that's really exciting and helps, from what I hear from the teachers, are really excited about that program and they like it quite a bit. Your point on tax breaks, that's really well taken. I've heard that from several people. I have a bill right now that passed out of the House Ways and Means Committee. It's sitting on the House calendar, and I'm hoping we can move that forward. That addresses some tax breaks that folks are utilizing to take advantage of the system. And so there's one bill right there. But I think we can address some of those tax credits. We need to reevaluate whether or not they're good. Just yesterday, I received an email that a business in my district will be receiving $1 million in financial assistance through the Economic Development Department. And I think that's really promising. Some of those tax credits are really needed because I wouldn't like to see that business close, but they're just having a tough time. They rely a lot on the ag sector, and we need to get them through that. So there's some tax credits that are really good. There are other ones that we can do away with. I championed the adoption tax credit bill just a few years ago to help adopting families. There was one family that said it was going to cost them $50,000 to adopt their children. $50,000. So we offered an adoption tax credit so that there was like 18 states in the nation that didn't have one yet, and Iowa took their name off the list. So we could help some families address the financial implications of adoption. And I think that's an example of a tax credit that's really worth it. So we do need to reevaluate those tax credits.
Well, thank you for the question. Let me address the school closings first, because I recently talked with a group of superintendents about, and I basically asked them, what's more important, state supplemental aid, which is just what we gave $40 million for to the schools, so an increase of $40 million, or is it the problem of our students not enrolling in school? We're losing student enrollment in our schools. And they said student enrollment is the major problem. That's where they're losing $6,500 a student when a student doesn't enroll in their school. Whereas when we give $40 million of additional revenue to schools, that adds about 70 some dollars to the school's budget per student. So it's that $6,500 when we lose students. And so the more important question is, what are we doing as a community here in Northwest Iowa? What are we doing as a community to attract workers, to attract young families with kids to our schools? What are we doing to bring people back to Northwest Iowa? And that's really what I'm all about, is focusing on tax reform in our state of Iowa. Who knows that South Dakota just got declared to be the #1 move-to state in the nation? #1 move-to state in the nation, South Dakota, over Arizona and Florida. Why is South Dakota #1 move-to state in the nation? No income tax. I'm not saying we can get away from income tax, but I am saying we need to have major income tax reform. We need to have major corporate tax reform. We need to have major all kinds of taxes reform, because our tax system, we're the 42nd worst tax state in the nation. And if we can affect some of those tax changes, we will bring people back to our state. Instead of going to South Dakota, which I love South Dakota, it's a great state, but I'm just here to say Iowa has a lot more to offer than South Dakota. And so that's #1. We can bring our schools back into getting more enrollment and higher enrollments by doing some things here in our community. In fact, it can't be the state that does it all. Our communities have to do something as well. And so the Iowa Great Lakes Corridor has a terrific program that they're operating right now, and it's 5 by 5. So they want to increase our population here in the Iowa Great Lakes Corridor by 5% in the next 5 years. Great program, and we need to do some of those things. Do you think that if we have 5% more 5% more people move here, that some of those will be kids? And each one of those kids is worth right now about $6,500 per student for the school. That's a great way to look at it. We need to look at that $6,500 per student. Now, how to attract teachers, I think is another part of the two questions that you were asking. Well, we didn't have a lot of tools in our toolbox up until a week ago. A few days ago, we passed collective bargaining reform, and some of you don't like that. Some of you do, some of you don't, and I understand. And really, in order to look at this, what we did with this collective bargaining agreement, we allowed school districts to have local control. We allowed county supervisors to have local control, city councils, local control. And so they will be able to offer packages. They will be able to offer hiring bonuses if they so choose to bring much needed teachers to our schools. They will be able to do different things based on that school district that makes sense to that school district. I myself have no clue what Dubuque schools need or want or can do. I do have a little bit of an idea what happens or what we need here in Spirit Lake or Okoboji. The school board has a way better idea than what I do. And so that's the two things that I think that we need to look at as far as what about school closings and what about bringing school teachers to our schools and how to attract those school teachers. And I think we're starting on the path to doing those sort of things. So just to reiterate, we need to attract people here. That's a state problem, but it's also a local problem, and we're working on that. And then the collective bargaining is the other part of that that will offer or allow school districts to have a great control over that sort of thing.
Thank you, Bill. Where'd you run away to?
Oh,
I saw you leave.
I want to
Spencer.
get up here and help Jeff set up chairs. I knew
Oh,
there'd be.
okay, all right. I just was wondering. I saw you leave. Okay. Well, if there's another round of school consolidation, that'll be decided locally. It's people, we can't just say we're only going to have this many counties, this many school districts, this many viable cities. That's not the legislature's role to do that. I would, for the first schools that come to mind would be probably Ruth Van Ayrshire and Grettinger Terrell, but they're very proud communities, and but they're also very small, and the geographic area just keeps getting larger. And I don't want to see young students on buses forever. Nobody, I think, wants to see that. So that really is dependent upon what the legislature does for funding schools. Well, 1%. The 1.1% that went first.
1.11, David.
Yes,
You stressed that this morning.
1.11%. The 40 million okay, number one, okay, I'm an independent, all right? I hope some of you know that, maybe new people who haven't been here. And it's a pretty hip crowd, isn't it? A pretty hip crowd. I mean, it kind of comes to mind our literary giant Bob Dylan wrote in Tangled Up in Blue. He wrote the last lines are, "We always did see things the same, but we saw them from a different point of view." So I'm not liking what the Republican-controlled legislature is doing, especially in this count, for the governor to come out at 2%, and then we just do 1.1. So I voted against that bill because you're going to not help rural schools by underfunding them. Teachers are going to go under this new collective bargaining law are going to go to the richest school districts. I wouldn't worry so much about them leaving the state, but they're going to go to where they can get the most pay, and that means rural schools will not be offering a world-class education, in my opinion. That's where they're going to go. We can talk more about that as far as, well, I agree, I've been talking about the tax incentives for a long time. We just lost total control of that, and I've been complicit in that. I'll admit that, giving a few tax incentives away at a time. Local people giving 20-year, 100% tax abatements on property taxes for new projects, things like that have gone on, and it's hurt. It's hurt badly, and we need to rein that in. So now we're talking about local control. So teachers getting excessive salaries, I've heard that, but isn't that a local decision as to how much the teachers are paid? That's what I don't get. And how does this reform, actually, it's a gutting of our collective bargaining law. I know the history of where that came from. I grew up with Bob Ray. I love Bob Ray, and he had the right idea in the early 70s. After, I don't know, you didn't really mention the series of strikes that were going on around the state. We had 19 teachers in Keokuk in jail, and it was going to spread throughout the state. We were a strike state. Public employees could strike. They gave that up, though, after Bob Ray brought a Republican legislature to the table, other interests, and passed the collective bargaining law that's been working, in my opinion, very well for the last 42 years. But we have people outside the state who think differently, and they launched this charge into Iowa, and we can talk more about that later because it really doesn't address your question directly. But I thought that this was a local decision as to what's in that package, what's in that package to the teachers. So a lot of school districts have already settled. To my knowledge, the governor hasn't signed this, and I don't really want to make any more comments about collective bargaining until we actually get to that issue, unless you want to dive in there, Bill. But I'm really concerned about our schools and about the funding, and it's not a pretty picture in my view.
I believe the current figure was 190 schools have gone ahead and extended their contracts.
That's over half.
And that was as of this morning? That was as of this morning. Because I had on here notes to myself, and there was only 182 yesterday morning, so. Thank you for your, and I'll leave this, I'll make sure I put my email address and whatever if you want it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Barb Worth, there we are, right there, if you want to come up, and she wants to talk about minimum wage. Is that too tall for you, Barb?
Yeah.
I'm not drawing any conclusions, I'm just observing.
Okay, I would just simply like to know where the Iowa legislators stand on minimum wage.
Okay. I'm signed on, here, maybe we should stand up. I'm signed on to a bill that was sponsored by, or introduced by Senator Bolton from Des Moines. He's a newly elected Democrat there, and I signed on to that. It's very similar to Polk County's, except I believe in equal pay for equal work. And what Polk County did was to have a minimum wage increase that's phased in that pays teenagers less money. I don't care if you're 17 or you're 70, if you do equal work, you get equal pay. And I don't care if you're a man or a woman, you get equal work, pay for equal work. I mean, I don't think teenagers ought to be paid less for some strange reason, but that's the way Polk County went, but that's not in the bill. Will it go anywhere? Probably not. I'm just really sick and tired of this argument that I've always heard from the GOP that it's just going to kill jobs and all those things. We've got people out there that are hurting. And I realize that McDonald's will be paying or the fast food industry, maybe I should just be general in my comments. It might be paying $9 and $10 an hour in spots, but I know too many people, especially single moms with children, who are also trying to get an education, working a couple of jobs, minimum wage, maybe a little bit more, and they're struggling to make ends meet. And our Medicaid, they probably qualify for Medicaid because they're low income, and but our Medicaid system's a mess because this governor decided that we needed to privatize it. He calls it modernization, but I talked to enough people who were on Medicaid before, and there were very few problems. Now there's a lot more problems. I'm still hearing from people. So anyway, I think it's time to put it to a vote, but it's been Iowa's history to wait for the federal government to raise the minimum wage first. Then we'll follow along. We're never leaders. Can we just be leaders for a change? And I really don't believe, I know some of you probably do, and you can argue with me, but I'm ready to vote yes for an increase in the minimum wage.
Thank you.
Well, let's talk, could I just ask a question of you?
Sure.
What was minimum wage originally offered for?
When I started working in the workforce, 75 cents an hour for women.
I'm sorry, let me ask the question.
Men got more.
And I don't think anybody disagrees with Senator Johnson. I think equal wage for equal work is across the board. But what I'm asking is, what is the purpose of the minimum wage? Does anybody know?
I guess I'd never thought about it.
Okay. Well, the purpose of the minimum wage is simply to provide a learning wage. It's something that when people get into the workforce, they're offered a minimum wage. That's the minimum wage on something that somebody should earn so that they can get educated on the job so that employers are more willing to hire a person that doesn't have a skill or doesn't have the ability to do that job. They're able to hire that person at a minimum wage, which then allows more people to be hired, more people to enter the workforce, and more people to gain an education on that position. And so in the state of Iowa, we have 300,000 minimum wage earners in the state of Iowa. Around 200 and a little bit over 300,000, but around 225 or 250,000 of those are 17 and under. So right away, we're talking most of those minimum wage people are kids. They're working from high school on a summer
Not
job.
in this area, no. I object to that.
If you'll let me finish.
You're painting everyone with the same brush.
No, I'm giving you statistics from the state of Iowa. I'm all over the state of Iowa. And so you've also got about 12 to 15,000 that are people that really, they can't develop an education. They're not able to be trained. They have a incapacity in the ability to learn how to do a job. And so then you have a group of other people, let's just call them the others. So what you have then is you've got a vast number of these people are high school kids. So if you increase the minimum wage, you're right away going to offset and provide high school kids with a larger minimum wage, which is fine. That's fine. But what the statistics show us is that our state would very quickly lose 15,000 jobs. So those people that would lose their jobs, if you'll let me finish, those people that would lose their jobs are the people that cannot be developed into a job and learn a skill. So what we're going to see is those people will lose their jobs, or people like them would lose their jobs, and you will find that our state would then have to pick up their part of their benefits. Yeah, because I keep getting interrupted by folks. So here's the deal. The other side of
Here's had his hand up for quite a while. I think maybe a young person might have something to say about it.
We prefer questions that come from the podium, so let's.
the other side of the other.
Okay, please.
The other side of that is, if you give, let's say, a minimum wage of $10.10 an hour, that's the one that's been floated out there. What then would happen is the people that are on public assistance would very quickly lose their public assistance dollars, and so you're basically defeating the purpose of the minimum wage. So for those two purposes, I'm not in favor of a minimum wage. What I am in favor of is educating our people, giving them the ability to learn a skill, giving them the ability to provide for themselves, and very quickly you would see that our state would prosper with that sort of.
They need money to get that education.
Ma'am, and what I'm saying is we can provide that a lot less expensively than we can to do other things. We have community colleges that provide a wonderful and terrific education. And if we allow those community colleges to open up and provide additional services, people would very quickly get off of the minimum wage the minimum wage area. And I'll just throw out here in the Isle Great Lakes, how many jobs are minimum wage jobs?
Many.
Where? Name one.
All of the ones
All the summer ones.
At Pirates Cove, okay? I didn't know that. Okay. Okay. I didn't know that. Most of the jobs that I know of are more than $10.
Thinking, telling us how the state is going to prosper under what you're doing, so you don't even know what the hell's going on here. That's the problem.
True.
No, I do.
You keep selling the same disdain and the same crap, but you don't know what's going on.
Sir, we're trying to have a dialogue here. I'm answering a question and you continue to interrupt.
But you didn't want to hear anybody say anything.
That's not the format that we're in, sir. Sir, we're not in that format. I would be happy to talk to you after the session, or you could submit a question just like everybody else. Sir, there are plenty of people who have submitted questions and followed the proper format that want to ask their question.
This young man has something to say, and I won't let him speak.
You're welcome to sign up in the back, and we can take your question as it comes along. There's two issues here with minimum wage. One has to do with preemption, and preemption addresses the issue of each different county setting a different minimum wage. I think this is settled law, that that's a state issue, but apparently we need to fix some language there to ensure that it is a state issue. But that all said, I've talked to several business owners, several people who employ summer help, and raising the minimum wage would not impact their business at all. So I'm open to it. You know, when we see the fast food workers, there's a janitor, they have a big sign, their big sign up front says that they're paying their janitors $14 an hour. So, I mean, I'm certainly open to it, but I don't think it will impact us a whole lot back home.
Okay, thank you. Now we know where we stand.
Thank you, Megan. Okay, well, just because we haven't had enough excitement, Mr. Nicolay, a number of you talking about collective bargaining in Chapter 20, so invite Mr. Nicolay to come up here and speak on it, ask a question.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Rich Nicolay, resident of Okoboji, and a teacher in Iowa for 39 years. Very proud to be a teacher. Before I begin my prepared comments, Representative Wills, I take offense by what you just said about others that we teach. I am very proud to teach others to learn a skill. There are mothers and fathers who work at these minimum wages who are trying to keep their families together. It is offensive to speak that way about others. They are part of our program, our school. And as some of you heard earlier, a person was singing, warming up for a musical production to occur in this fine facility this afternoon. The 1.1% that was passed is cutting out some of the arts programs locally and across the state. By programs, I mean educators to teach kids. Thank you for being here today to speak with and not to the constituents of your respective districts. I will begin with an easy question, which will only require a yes or no response, with no explanation required at this time, as I will have a follow-up. Do you believe that employees and employers should collaborate together in reference to the working conditions and benefits in which they all work? Representative Jones?
Yes.
Representative Wilson?
Absolutely.
Yes. Senator, thank you. I believe what has happened in the past 11 days since the Chapter 20 collective bargaining reform bill was introduced is a direct attack on public workers, showing disrespect for the public worker, including teachers. It was crafted behind closed doors with none or very little input from those whom would be affected the most. Over 180,000 Iowans, our neighbors, our relatives, our colleagues, Iowans. When legislators were questioned on the floor as to who wrote the bill, the legislators would not or could not identify the authors. It was debated late at night. Senator Johnson, I thank you for your support of the public worker, as evidenced by your comments from the floor. You put forth an amendment late on Wednesday evening to put this train back at the station and create a study committee, which would involve all parties to study Chapter 20. And if the changes agreed to be made, then so be it. The Senate rejected this idea of collaboration. This is a collective bargaining bill. Let me repeat, collective bargaining. Collective means collaboration. As an educator, some of the 21st century skills we teach are questioning, problem solving, critical thinking, team building, listening, and leadership, teamwork, collaboration, cooperation. Let me repeat, this is a collective bargaining bill. I pose this question to each of you. What was collective about drafting, introduction, debate in this collective bargaining bill in coming to a collaborative conclusion which is best for all Iowans? Is this how we will expect the legislative to continue this session? Thank you.
Well, let me tackle this first. I don't think that there was anything out of line with the way that the collective bargaining bill was approached. This is the third attempt at changing collective bargaining in the last 10 years. Back in 2007, the Democrats tried to craft legislation by moving forward a shell bill, which is just a non-issue bill, and then they attached a bunch of collective bargaining issues to that the night before. There was no discussion, there was no public involvement, and then they used time certain twice on that same bill. So in the last 10 years, collective bargaining has been addressed 3 times. This is the 3rd time. 2010 or 11, it was addressed again, and the bill that we passed 2 days ago and was signed by the governor yesterday is basically the same bill which Senator Johnson supported back in 2010 and 11, is the same bill that was passed Thursday. And so when I hear people say that there was just not enough time given, this has been in the works for 10 years. Back in November, people were invited to become part of this. We heard from the floor, the House floor, on Wednesday or Thursday that all parties were allowed to be part of it. The unions chose to not be part of the collective bargaining discussion. They pulled themselves out of it. And so when I hear people say people are not being included, they were. They chose to not be part of the discussion. We went through the exact process in the House and the Senate to pass a bill that every other bill goes through. Now, simply because it went against the way that you want doesn't make that matter even more or less. It is simply the way that the process works. And so it is offensive to say that we move something faster or slower because we're trying to hurt somebody. Absolutely not. I believe our teachers are way underpaid in our state. If I could, I'd pay you $100,000 a piece. And I've said that to many people. I've said it publicly. I believe you're that important. The reality is we just can't afford that. We just can't pay that. Now, I've also heard mention, and these are fancy campaign slogans, this is an ALEC bill. This is a bill from out of the state. Dark money funded this bill. The Koch brothers, ooh, they're evil. Those are people that helped to do this bill, and they ran this bill through. I tell you what, I'm not associated with ALEC. I've never met the Koch brothers. I don't know anybody about the Koch brothers. I don't have a clue what they even represent. This bill is not about the Koch brothers. It's not about ALEC. It is about what's right for Iowa. It is about 3 million people in the state of Iowa, not just 180,000 people, 3 million people in the state. It is about fairness and bringing 3 million people, 3 million taxpayers to the table, not just 180,000 people to the table. It is about taking care to ensure that we're treating all of our state equally, but also making sure that our employees are being treated fairly. This bill does not end collective bargaining. It enhances it. It allows for local control. It gives you the ability as teachers to be part of that table equally as well. But it gives the taxpayers the right to be there as well.
Thank you, John. I would have to agree that this bill does put the taxpayers back at the table. When it comes to your question, how was this bill worked on in a collaborative and collective way, I think that's a great question. This bill followed all of the rules regarding procedure, regarding notice. It's funny because a supplemental state aid bill can't fly out of that building fast enough, but then this bill needs to move slower. So I just find that really really quite fascinating. After the bill was dropped, we took a lot of comment through the subcommittee process, through the committee process. We had a public hearing. Many of us had forums, and we heard from people, and I certainly also through emails and phone calls, we heard from people and we made changes to the bill. There was an amendment offered by Representative Dio, which had a second-degree amendment with Representative Holt, and I think that helped. That helped the bill. It made it easier for people to, made it more palatable. So I think that amendment really shows the collaborative work that we did to address many of the issues that people had with it.
Tangled up in blue, I think. Here, anyway. We just saw it from a different point of view, is what Dylan wrote, and that's exactly what you're going to hear right now. Well, I'd sure like to know that I voted for this bill back then. There was probably some strategy to that, but whatever. This was railroaded through so quickly. Sure, you follow the rules, but you follow the rules, but you really don't give the public any chance to respond to them. Not everybody's, that tied into email. Hard to believe, but teachers have a hard job. For example, state workers are out there. I'll take the same approach I did in Spencer. This is all about Terry Branstad getting even with the leader of the state's largest union, ASME. Go back to the 1990s. They made an agreement. They settled in an agreement, new labor agreement. But then the governor, when he was governor back in the 90s, that was before I was in the legislature, he decided that the state couldn't afford that kind of a pay increase and benefits increase, so he refused to pay it. Now, I should say that with state workers, the negotiations are between the governor and the union. We're not involved in that. We just have to either appropriate enough money to cover it or not give enough money to cover it, and then that means layoffs within the state workers. And so that's the way that works. So, Danny Holman, who still is the head of ASME, sued, and the Supreme Court ruled that not in the governor's favor, that agreement had to be met. And Governor Branstad, who I consider a friend and an ally, I just don't recognize some of the things he's doing right now. He just wants to stick it to Danny Holman before he leaves for China as our new ambassador. That's really what it comes down to. That's really what it is.
He's a lame duck now.
I know. Well, yeah, that came out in the debate quite a bit, that he is a lame duck. So that's another issue about that is how we're going to proceed here in this transition. But anyway, so we saw this bill for the first time. The people of Iowa saw this bill for the first time on Tuesday, February 8th. Tuesday, February 8th. I believe it went to subcommittee on Wednesday, the full committee on Thursday. We went home, so Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I had one town hall. It was Representative Jones in Emmitsburg. There was a lot more people there than had ever been there before, and nobody spoke in favor of this bill. If you're in favor of it, I invite you to the microphone today. I didn't really hear anybody down in Spencer do the same thing. It was standing room only, just like it is here. Monday, there's a public hearing, which is basically a formality. The House knows exactly how they're going to vote. The House gets to call a public forum. I was downstairs for a couple of hours, standing with the Democrats, standing with the state workers and the teachers at the rally that preceded that public hearing, which was live streamed then. And I worked late into that night to kind of catch up. Not that I'm, a big fan of unions, but they're legal. This is the way we do things. But, so then Tuesday afternoon, we start debate on the bill, 4 o'clock, about 4 o'clock, go until about 9. You think this has really been, I mean, do you want me to just stop now? Because has this really been open to the public? I mean, we've already started debate now, a week later. And you know, it was the plan of in the Senate of the Democrats and myself, who number 21, there's 29 Republicans, to slow this down and let you have a chance at us again. I mean, I really knew that I was getting a lot of email and a lot of calls from Spirit Lake, or the Lakes area, I guess I should say, Lake Park 2, Lokoboji, and as well as Spencer. I wanted to hear what people had to say. It wasn't just enough to go to Emmitsburg. You're probably twice as big as Emmitsburg was. And same thing with Spencer. A lot more people here. So I don't want to take up too much time. But I think we really need to know what's going on here. And so we began debate. Well, let's just say I got up at 5 o'clock Wednesday morning, and my head didn't hit the pillow until 6 o'clock Thursday night. The Democrats forced us to go straight through the night. The only time that in my 19 years that you ever do that is at the end of the session, when you want to try to get done and go home, and the farmers get to plant corn, and you know, the rest of us go back to our lives, whether we have jobs or not, or whatever. That's about the only time. But then it was called time certain. We had to conclude our debate at 2 o'clock. I've never in 15 years seen time certain called in the Senate. Never. And Wally Horn is a senator from Cedar Rapids, and he helped write the bill, or the law, the collective bargaining law in 1974. He's been there that long. He is our, I don't know, whatever the word is for it, but he's our longest serving senator of all time, 42 years. But that's how long he's been around. And there was, in all those years, he cannot remember a time certain called in the Senate to cut off debate, to cut off the public, to cut off the senators who want to raise questions, who want to offer amendments. It was embarrassing, to say the least, disappointing. It's not the way we should govern. You know, I might have other opinions, but to me it's about governing and how you do that. You don't shut the public out. I know that one of Representative Holt, he said that this bill was written by Iowans for Iowans. Well, nobody asked me. How many people were asked to help write this bill out there? I don't think so. I mean, so I'm going to just agree to disagree here on this, and I know that I asked Senator Schultz, Jason Schultz from Schleswig, who was the floor manager of the bill, didn't really say anything during all the amendments. We had about 60 amendments that address things like, you know, the whole probable cause, or good cause, or for cause, or not for, you know, are we going to be able to fire people without cause? Just fire them, just terminate them for whatever reason, because I thought the way Tony Bisignano, the senator from Des Moines, I call him the Italian stallion, and anyway, so Tony was talking about, what about if my brother-in-law has a nephew who needs a job, you know, and so I just decided I'm going to terminate somebody to open up that job. I mean, you know, we're talking real inside politics here, but I mean, it's disgraceful that you could just terminate somebody without cause as quickly as that. I mean, we've gutted it. We've busted the unions, is exactly what's happened here. This is union busting at its very worst. That's what it is, folks. Okay, so what you get to bargain basically on, this might be a little bit of an oversimplification, is your wage. That's it. But if your management agrees that you may want to talk about health insurance, you may want to talk about hours, you may want to talk about seniority rules, personal days, all those things, you know. If they open up anything, you could talk about it, but that doesn't require management to do that. This is just really shameful that this has happened, and it's like, well, it's already been said, it's signed into law. It took 2 years to put this together, this law, under Bob Ray's leadership. And the Republicans have taken less than 2 weeks to destroy it. Less than 2 weeks. It's done. It's over with. Now, the only hope would be in the courts. And I know I'm going to hear it, oh, those courts, those activist judges. But there is a real important point here, is that police and fire were taken out of the bill. In a sense, they were protected. They can bargain for more things than teachers can, or that state workers can, or DHS people can. Why? Because we just have a warm fuzzy about the sacrifices, and it's an important warm fuzzy for police and for firefighters who risk their lives. But so does that DHS worker, that Child Protective Services worker who goes into a home that doesn't know what might be encountered, and that she's been assaulted before, and maybe even worse the next time. I mean, shouldn't they be involved in that? Or what about the University of Iowa police, who when Gang Lou, blew whatever happened to Gang Lou, whatever that was at the University of Iowa, I think it was in 1991, and rushed into the building at the University of Iowa and started shooting people, killing people, and the University of Iowa police, they call themselves police, ran in they were unarmed at the time. They're armed today, but they were unarmed at the time. Aren't they valuable too? Don't they do that same high-risk job? Well, some of them got shot, I think, if I remember right. So the only hope is, and it's gone to court, just like the last time it happened, based on United States Constitution protections under the Equal Protection Clause, and in our state constitution, under two sections of the Constitution, one that says that all laws are uniform in nature, in other words, they apply to everybody, and also that there are no protected classes under our state constitution. So that means you can't just separate out one group of people and give them something that you don't give somebody else. And this is all about public employees, so that should apply there too. I think it's intentional. And this bill did not originate in Iowa. I used to be a member of ALEC. It claims it has more membership, both Republicans and Democrats, than any other group in the country. But it's funded by some pretty heavy hitters and people with lots of money. Did anybody get a flyer in the mail about the call your legislators to tell them to vote yes for this bill? Did you get one? Okay, that was paid for by Americans for Prosperity, which is funded by the Koch brothers. The commercials that were on TV about teachers, that was funded by an outside organization outside Iowa. Oh, do they have Iowa members? Oh, yeah. But this is paid for by these are interests this is where our politics has gone.
That should be more transparent.
Well, it should be. It should, especially with the short period of time. We brought it up in the debate all the time about who was really paying for this. And it did, but in such a short period of time, you can't find out, you can't follow the money. You can't connect the dots in that short a period of time in less than 2 weeks. Tear down something that took 2 years to build. Okay, that's my version, and I'm sticking by it, and whatever. If you are in favor, I want to just repeat that one more time. If you're in favor of this bill, I'd sure like to hear from you, because I haven't heard through this whole thing one person in favor out of the 60,000 people I represent.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Mr. Nicolay, for coming up and asking the question. Normally, we'd be going into wrap up right now, but I'd like to give the opportunity to do one more question. I hope you don't mind if we go a little bit of extra innings, go a couple minutes over. Sandy Ladegard on DNR.
Stay here as long as we got questions.
Thank you, Representative Jones, Representative Wills, and Senator Johnson for taking the time to listen to us. Thank you for your service. We know it is a difficult job and it requires courage.
Thank you.
As elected officials who are forward-looking, I assume you know that the future of our state rests on attracting and keeping young people and families. You've referred to that in terms of our smaller school districts. If you look around any area, rural or urban, you will see that there's younger citizens and families out on trails, hiking, biking, on rivers and streams and lakes, kayaking, fishing and swimming, all of them, and all other ages need balance. I'm a past counselor. I served in the schools for years. These activities need to occur in an enjoyable environment where there is clean water and refreshing air. In order to obtain and sustain these conditions, it will be important to fund the sales tax increase of 3/8 cent to fund the Natural Resources Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund. It would also be wonderful if the DNR and the Department of Agriculture and Land Stewardship, as supporting entities, could be funded increasingly too. It has been 6 years since the trust fund was approved by 63% of the voters. The latest Des Moines Register polls show that 56% of Iowans support raising the sales tax to fund water quality and outdoor recreation. More importantly, but just as an aside perhaps, 67% of Iowans under age 35 support this effort. These generations coming up are very recreationally oriented, and they're also environmentally oriented. As a past counselor, I can attest to the fact that outdoor activities in clean surroundings contribute to the physical and mental health of our children and our families. They have many other choices of states to move to. Look north, look south, look east and west. Look at their recreational funding. Look at what they are doing to keep their waters clean and their air clean. Please do this for our children and for the state you serve. I would like to ask you how you stand, how you would vote today on the Natural Resources Outdoor Recreation Trust Fund.
Yes.
Thank you. Under, as it's written, 3/4%.
Yeah, I've got the bill.
Yes.
I introduced the bill.
And thank you for introducing that bill with others. I appreciate that. Representative Wills.
Yeah, I have 2 bills that are in draft writing right now. One of them is a tax reform package that would include an increase of 1 cent of sales tax, which would automatically fund the trust fund. I have another bill that is not quite fleshed out yet that would also increase sales tax by a penny. And so the answer to your question in short is yes.
Thank you. Pardon me?
Ask the question by itself. I hate to interrupt here, but vote for my bill or no?
Yes.
Don't tangle it up in a tax reform.
Okay.
I'll answer that because the senator has expressed that this is the era of tripartisanship. He's talked about that on the Senate floor, and really what I've seen from him is triple partisanship in the Senate. And so would I vote for his bill? No, I'm not going to vote for his bill as it stands. The bill that he has is not suitable for the state of Iowa. I have the solutions that I've worked with a coalition of a group of people that I believe has a chance to succeed. The senator's bill has no chance of success.
Who is that coalition then, please, John? The coalition?
There are several. Well, we have the majority in the House and we have the majority in the Senate, so it is Republicans.
How about bipartisan?
Bingo.
The
So-
coalition of environmental groups.
To the dogs.
If you're going to insult us, then that's fine. But I have just told you that I am in favor of the I Will Trust Fund and have two bills in which would do just that. Any other questions?
The names of those bills, please, the designations of those bills?
They're not, they're in draft form right now.
Okay.
Not for Ways and Means bills.
Thank you. We'll be watching those.
Yeah, I definitely support the Will's proposal, the Will's bill. I think it's a really great step forward, and it'll get money into that trust fund.
You don't think for yourself what's wrong. Party line.
Now listen, ladies and gentlemen, and I really resent that, John. The question is, do you vote for it? Are you gonna vote on collective bargaining along with a lot of other junk that goes in there? Are you gonna vote for a 1% sales tax, or a school SSA increase and a lot of other junk in there? No, it's a single bill. You know, yes or no. Don't tie anything into it because it won't pass. It won't pass. I mean, how many times do we have to come back to this subject? Remember 2010, and I don't know if I said this before, but a lot of new people here. What happened in 2010? Tea Party year. Tea Party year. Okay, 3 Supreme Court justices were thrown off the high court in this state. All right, Terry Branstad was back in office with 53% of the vote. And what the Tea Party, what was it? There are 2 issues, taxing and spending. But 63% of Iowans voted for the establishment of this trust fund and pretty much sent a strong signal. I read it that way because it's the only way to have written that constitutional amendment, that they'll come back to the legislature and we'd raise the sales tax 3/8%. So we have revenue slowing down. There, we're cutting schools. We're pretty much gutting unions in this state, public unions at least, and the private ones are next. Even though, remember, we're a right-to-work state, so there could be other things that go on.
Work for less.
And, yeah, well, you can make that argument. That's a good point. Okay, so, anyway, we can have another subject, but I mean, this is something that she's absolutely right about. Go down to Ankeny. I mean, they build an elementary school every 2 years. The place is exploding with young families, and guess where they are? Every time I drive through that town, because I'm very close to it, I go up and grocery shop, the families are on those trails. They've got trail systems everywhere. This is what people want. I'm not going to be an old guy and say, well, it wasn't that way when I was their age. I don't work that way. I love young people, and I want to keep them in this state. It's the only future that we have. I'm just really getting tired of this. Yeah, but it's got to be tied to something else, and like reduce the income taxes or whatever. Okay, it's not going to happen this year. And guess what? It won't happen next year because it's an election year. And so it won't happen next year because then we'll be short of funds again. We got to make up, maybe we could pay schools 1.5% instead of 1.11%. And then the next year's going to be an election year. Oh, can't do it. I wasn't sent here to raise taxes. Well, that's the whole trouble that we're in. That's the whole trouble Kansas is in. I mean, they just cut taxes everywhere, and now they're $1 billion short of meeting their essential services in that state. $1 billion. Come on, let's step up to the plate, vote for it, and if you want to run again, you're going to be reelected because these people are in favor of it.
I think the answer to your question was we have 3 legislators who have said that they would vote for I will. I can tell, and the senator has been in the legislature for 18 years. He knows just as well as I know after 3 years that it takes building coalitions, it takes building partnerships, it takes doing the art of the possible, and I know with discussions of fellow legislators that just a 3/8 cent or a penny sales tax increase is not possible. But if you were to do it as part of a tax reform package or another type of reform or another type of process, it is possible. Just tax increase is not possible with the slowdown in the economy that we
They're
have.
both assistant leaders in the Republican House.
And that's what
We are,
They are
and
both assistant leaders.
I find it interesting that I'm getting lectured about being a young person in Iowa by someone who's been in the legislature almost as long as I've been alive. In any case, as a young person in Iowa, I use a trail system and I appreciate the trail system. I actually have a date with a 16-month-old 5 minutes ago to go on a walk. And so here's the thing, I think we all agree that this trust fund needs to be funded in one way or another. It's about getting it done. And I think the John Wills bill will get it done.
Why don't you go ahead and just
Well,
go into your closing comments?
thank you for speaking up on just this bill. 6 years have gone by. I would like to know how many parents in this room have had their adult children stay in this state.
Mine can raise their hands.
One. Tell me how many children? One?
All three.
Three? All right. Everybody else who had their adult children move out of the state, raise your hand. Jobs. The environment. You're losing people in our school districts. You're losing people in our school district. Thank you.
Let's go into your closing comments.
On that happy note, I just want to thank you all for being here today, and hopefully you will also be able to enjoy the trail system today because we have a beautiful day here. And I just want to say, well, we might not always agree on the issues, and while our constituents don't always agree on the issues, I appreciate the ability to discuss them with you. I appreciate your emails, your phone calls. This isn't the only way to contact us. I hope that you realize that you don't have to take a whole chunk of your Saturday morning out to be here with us. We're always able to communicate via email and phone calls, and I'm happy to do that. Thank you.
You only took 4 questions, isn't that right? 4 people were allowed to ask questions?
We had the time allotment for an hour, we've gone over that.
You know, I'm willing to stay here and talk afterwards, and I don't know, I'm not going to speak for the others, but you know, we had a process. We did talk a lot about the past today. We talked about just the last week. That's important to talk about, and we were, for the most part, very respectful, and I appreciate that. And I want to thank you all for your respectful conversation. And I would like to continue that respectful conversation and dialogue. I believe that we need to have that, and that's why we're here. We're here to hear what you have to say. I think that, though, we need to look to the future. I mean, there's many things that we didn't get a chance to talk about. I agree with you. We have many things that we could have talked about, things that would make a big difference in the state of Iowa. I have a bike safety bill that I would have loved to talk about. I've got it right here, and it's in a draft form that would allow for bikes to be more safe. That will allow for cars to pass bikes and save lives. We won't have young ladies being hit on the road just up the street. We've got other things that we could have talked about and spent looking forward about, and that's where we're at. We've got to look to the future. We've got to move our state so that we have jobs that our kids will stay at. We've got to look forward and look at our tax process, because our tax process, we're the 42nd worst tax state in the nation. We have high income tax, high corporate tax, high property tax, high inheritance tax. Every one of our taxes, high sales tax, every one of our taxes is 40s or higher. And we've got to look at reforming that and look at how can we I'm not saying cut taxes, I haven't said cut taxes once, but how can we alleviate the burden and bring some of those people that are moving to South Dakota back to Iowa, making Iowa the place to move to. We should be the most moved to state. An important article came out that showed that Iowa is the #1 state to retire in. Well, that's great, but I want Iowa to be the #1 state to live in. I want Iowans to come back. That means trails. That means things to do, because the millennials, the younger kids, I'm not part of that, need to have something to do. I didn't say that. I have said I'm fully in support of education. We need to have a great education system. We need to work, you know, and you can sit there in a crowd, and I just ask for respectful dialogue, and you're interrupting. And that's perfectly fine. That's your right to do. But what I'm saying is we need to look to the future. We need to move forward and let's make this state, let's make Dickinson County the best county in the state of Iowa. Let's grow our county. And that's up to us. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, John. Thank you, Megan. I don't know what looks to the future better than increasing the state sales tax and just getting it done. Anyway, there's a couple other issues that I've got going. With the help of Paul Johnson, your supervisor here at Dickinson County, kind of getting me interested. I do have this what we've referred to as a master matrix. I'm the last one in the legislature who had anything to do with writing the law about hog confinements in 2002, okay? Well, I'm the last one. Now, wait a minute. I don't know if you're going to be, are you really going to applaud that? You mean all the others are gone? Yeah, all the others are gone. Okay, I get it. The others are gone because you don't like the law. Okay, great. But we need to, the arguments that I've heard here are that, on collective bargaining is that, geez, it's been 42 years. It's time for us to change it. Boy, have they ever in just 2 weeks. But the other thing we need to do is that law, that confinement law, the livestock confinement law is, now 14 years old. So shouldn't that be, we haven't really reviewed the matrix, and it's kind of troublesome because it maybe fit the scene back in 2002 and 3 when it was implemented, but it sure doesn't fit it now. Farmers and even absentee landlord or landowners are doing this, is they're putting up confinements that have fewer than 1,250 hogs. That is the threshold that starts the regulations such as separation distances. They're building them smaller, they're building lots of them, and there are no separation distances in the law to a home, a business, a school, a church, or a public use area. Public use area means what? Parks, okay. The trails, okay, good. Odor, okay. So I've got a bill that's coming that will put together a group of people, all the stakeholders, both ag and environment and other people, and sit down in the open. We did not develop this law in the open. We did it behind closed doors, and it was embarrassing to me. And I'll never do it again. But that was the way it was set up, and I was part of it, and I figured, well, I better be part of it rather than not know what's going on in there. And so anyway, to do that. Do I think it's going to pass? I've already been told by the ag chair in the Senate, no, we're not interested. We don't need to do it. He's a farmer. And Farm Bureau's against it too. I'm really getting tired of Farm Bureau, but they are just like anti-everything. And I know I'm a Farm Bureau member, but I'm just getting tired of it. The other thing is another bill, is that some of the largest hog producers in the nation, they happen to be from Iowa, are pushing into the karst area in northeast Iowa. The karst is a limestone carbonate, and I'm sure my good friend Jane here would tell you more about it. Some of you know about it, but that's where water erodes that limestone. And did you see just where that car fell in? And just on TV, how many sinkholes have we seen on the news channels? Well, one of the biggest hog, in fact, 25th biggest hog producers in the state, lives a convenient 2 counties away, and he wants to put one in Alameda County that is between 2 sinkholes. I've been there. I have been there. And because the local senator isn't interested, and I am. I also serve the state. I don't just serve these 5 counties. And I help write this. I have a responsibility to do this. But I just want to set the scene for where we're going. And it's right at the headwaters of 2 naturally reproducing trout streams. And a little bit farther down in that watershed is a Bible camp. And down to the Mississippi, you got an interpretive center, a $3 million interpretive center that tells you about the landscape, about the karst landscape, about the driftless area, they call it. Because the last advance of the glaciers basically was the Des Moines lobe that hit here and went down to Des Moines, and that was not glaciated. So you have those wonderful hills and valleys, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful place up there in Alameda County. That county just passed a resolution just recently that they need more control. about where these go. Okay, neighboring Winnebago County has signed a resolution. Floyd County has signed, which has some cars in it, has signed or has adopted a resolution. Webster County, I believe, has a resolution. It's a growing movement. I want to thank Paul Johnson for, he led some of this, and so one of the things that I want this task force to do is do a real study of all the counties, a real survey, a hard-nosed survey, and that we really need to get answers from about where we're going to go here, because these things should not be pushing. And I'll tell you, these 1,200 head units are in Dickinson County, and they're coming. They're coming, and if you care about that issue, you know, I live in Osceola County, but my town, Ocheyedan, and the elevator there is building a $20 million feed mill. And if you don't think that hog feed's going to be coming out of there, you're wrong. So I mean, there's going to be growth in the industry, and then we have the 2 big pork plants that are being built, and one of those by the 7th largest pork producer, the other one by the 2nd largest pork producer in the state. Follow the money. I mean, these things matter. These things matter. We are an ag state, but darn it, shouldn't we save at least some of what we have? You know, shouldn't we do that? Anyway. Okay, don't accuse me of being campaigning all the time, but these are important. I mean, leave that for the other guy who really does it. But anyway, I'm just telling you that you got to watch for some of these things. But I'll tell you, this Republican Party has no environmental message, and their education message ranks a D+ maybe. Okay, in my opinion, and I'm glad to be situated where I am, where I can really be an independent and not follow the party line and drink the Kool-Aid. And I'm sorry about that.
All right. Thank you, legislators. One thing I think we can all agree on is the fact that thank you to the Pearson Lakes Arts Center for letting us use their stage here today. Thank you for coming. Next one's on March 11th, City Council Chambers.